Back to the Future is one of my all-time favorite movies. The sequels are good too, but I can live with just the first one if I had to. I still kind of want a DeLorean, and if I ever find a red vest like Marty wears, I'm all over it. The movie is the peak of 80s pop culture and is referenced still today. I'm sure most have seen it, but yeah, all you need to know is that Marty and the eccentric Doc Brown team up for some time-traveling hijinks that quickly spin out of control and into 2 sequels. Today we're going to be looking at all 3 games on the NES spanning just 2 cartridges. Back to the Future and Back to the Future 2 and 3. Let's see what's up.
I'm playing the Back to the Future Nintendo game. I'm stuck in the past and I gotta get out. Quick! Or we all fade away to nothing. Uh-oh, bullies! Ah, you missed! Have a mark, musclehead! I'll clean it up, Mom, I promise. This takes perfect timing. Almost. Mom? Dad? This?
Back to the Future. It's almost like being in the movie. An interactive game from LJN.
This game has a reputation for being a worse version of Paperboy, and I guess technically that's true, but if I'm comparing Back to the Future here to the sequels coming later in the video, this game is honestly not that bad. It's also nowhere near good. The entire game is a race against time, which kind of makes sense given the subject matter. Now I'm with you. I don't recall most of the first movie having Marty sprint down the street while street lurkers launched things at him and tried to kill him. Who are these people, the Libyans? I guess the game takes place in 1955, so maybe they're your dad's bullies? I'm not sure. So anyway, that's what you do for a few levels in between the buildings on the map of Hill Valley. You have to travel to the cafe, then to the school, then the dance hall, and finally to the town courthouse. You race down the street, collecting clocks that add to your timer, but you need to avoid potholes, benches, and all of these angry people out and about. You might come to a skateboard that will definitely speed you up, but you're destined to run into something eventually. You can also pick up bowling balls while you're running, which is honestly some real talent, and use those to hit some of the bullies, but I never really found it worth it. I just dodged everything but clocks. You'll do this for a few levels in a row, and then you'll end up at the cafe. Each building you reach has its own minigame. The first in the cafe requires you to throw drinks off the bar at Biff and his buddies as they run inside. This is a bit of a challenge at first, but like anything, practice helps. Just don't hit the waitress. After that, it's back to the streets until you reach the school. The school is the opposite of the cafe's minigame. Instead of hitting people with things, you're trying to resist your mother's love by holding up a book and blocking her kisses, which comes in the form of hearts. This one is pretty easy. Then after another trip to the streets, you go to the dance party, where you'll need to rock out on stage by aligning the music notes to your stance. So you'll have to face the notes and press up and down to the note to match it. You'll figure it out as you go, and the meter on the right is your rock out meter. That will fill up if you're doing it right. The manual wasn't very helpful here, but it's not that hard to figure out. Then after that, it's back to the streets again, and let me tell you, this never gets old. Just kidding, it's awful. And this last stretch is pretty dang tough compared to your prior street ventures. Finally, you've made it to the courthouse, and you have to get the DeLorean up to, say it with me, 88 miles per hour. At the right moment to send Marty back to the future. But here's the thing, lightning is all over the place. It's freaking chaos out here, and it slows down the car constantly. If you aren't at 88 miles per hour at the end, it's an immediate game over too. Yeah, just like that, you're done. This is especially crummy because Marty gets 4 lives to complete each new area, but not the final stage. And so you know your life bar in the running stages is a photograph at the bottom that slowly fades away as time slips. That's kind of neat, I guess. So yeah, this one isn't all that fun, but I gotta say it's recognizable as Back to the Future, which you can't say the same for our next game. It's tough but not impossible, the music isn't great at all, and it's graphically less than charming. It's not worth your time, but it's more worth your time than... It's more worth your time than this one. Back to the Future 2 and 3 is a head scratcher and a half. What on earth is going on here? In fact, is this Earth? Did Marty and Doc travel to a different planet altogether instead of just a different time on Earth? That could explain some plot holes. So this one is a platformer with minigames spritzed in to torture you with. In some ways this game is more playable than the first, but somehow less fun. It's very hard to articulate why this game is so bad, and a lot of it has to do with it thematically missing the mark by a mile. There's a status panel at the bottom, which shows your number of lives remaining, number of junk food points, More about that in a second. And how much nuclear fuel you have, which you'll need for the DeLorean. If you hit select, your object panel will come up, and this shows the number of keys you have and rooms you've checked out. Once you get the DeLorean's remote control, you can select it here to summon the DeLorean so you can travel between 1955, 1985, or 2015. That's where the fuel comes in. Each time you travel, it'll require a certain amount of fuel, so you'll need to pick up fuel as you go. On the way around whatever nightmare hellscape of a town this is, you'll see it is littered with tons and tons of junk food. Remember in the movies when Marty just knocked back pounds and pounds of chips and soda? Yeah, me neither. But in this game, it's a life source. You have to collect 100 junk food points for an extra life. Good luck with that. Also, this game starts you with 10 lives, which may sound forgiving, but always be skeptical of a game so gracious to give you a bunch of lives. It's like they're trying to make up for a bad game. The good news is that you do have unlimited continues. But if you have to use one, you lose all of your junk food points. Big deal, right? And you'll lose all of your fuel, but you can find more pretty easily. Okay, so what are we supposed to do in this friggin' game? Great question. Like Mario, you jump on enemies' heads looking for keys. Keys open the doors that you come to. No, not those doors. Those doors just zip you around a very convoluted map system. Seriously, you'll get so lost in this game, it's not really even funny. They're basically portals that zip you up and around through whatever time you're in. But if you find a regular old door, with a handle on it, then that's a mini game. And I mean mini. Marty will be the size of a fly. A McFly? And you'll either have to collect everything on screen, or at the very least, collect all the clocks. Some are harder than others, like this one isn't that bad, just try to get all the clocks without sinking to the bottom. But then this one here is a freaking nightmare. Every time you get a clock, they alternate between being invisible or not. And trust me, speaking of Mario, these controls would not make him proud. Each time you complete one of these mini puzzles, you get a trophy, or essentially an object that goes somewhere in the timeline in some specific place, and it's up to you to find out exactly where that is. Call the DeLorean, select the time you want to go, and you'll show up there in a new place as lost and confused as ever. Aside from the DeLorean, there's not much here that feels very Back to the Future at all. This is supposed to be Biff, but it looks more like Michael Myers in a tank top, and there are hoverboards, but I don't think you can make hoverboarding less boring. It just goes left and right fast for a little bit. Each time you die, though, the DeLorean delivers you back to where you were, so, that's fun. If I squint hard enough, I can see the framework of a decent idea. Traveling back and forth through time to solve puzzles could have actually made for a decent NES adaptation of the movies. There's stuff like here where you find a seed that you'll need to plant in the past so that it will grow into something you can climb in the future to reach a higher area. So that's pretty neat, and thank goodness for infinite continues, but it's really just a very tedious and long game that takes hours to finish and has no passwords. You have to find and solve 30 of those mini puzzles. That's so much easier said than done. Then after you do that, you're rewarded with doing it again. But this time in the Old West as part of Back to the Future 3. Thankfully, you only have to collect 10 items here, but you'd be hard-pressed to make it this far. However, you can do that by entering a code on the title screen, so look that up if you're curious. Unfortunately, one of the greatest blockbuster franchises to ever grace the big screen got crappy video games on the small screen. Neither of these games are truly worth your time it takes to master or beat them, but I stand by that the first is better just for the simple fact that it has elements of the movie intertwined. I have no idea what was going on in the game for the second and third movie. It's just boring on top of bad on top of confusing. Alright, well that does it for the Back to the Future games on the NES. Watch out for Michael Myers, even in other franchises, and thanks for watching.